What's up, guys? It's your girl Samar. Welcome back to the front line, guys. Get in the van. I gotta break up a little cat fight right here. What is going on? Oh my gosh. Boy, guys, I got two cats now, and so now I gotta deal with two personalities. But listen, guys, we are still digging on the mounds. When they came into this country, we read last week, there were over 1 million mounds. This country was loving on this creator right here. Right? This creator that said in 24, make an altar of earth for me and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your fellowship offerings. Were they fellowshipping on top of these mounds? Your sheep and goats and your cattle, wherever I cause my name to be honored, right? So a name has to be remembered, right? Are we over here yelling some names that we've already gone ahead and found out that these names don't pre-exist the most ancient? These names don't pre-exist the most ancient name, and it's her name. And somebody ran their ass the hell up on out of here when I started with her. Right? And I don't give a damn. Let the door hit you where your male God splits you. Let it. Since that's what you want to believe so fiercely, man. You don't even want to believe your own eyes. Ain't nothing on this plane been able to recreate unless it was a female species, guys. So you need to believe your own eyes. Okay? Interesting fact, though, guys. There is evidence of the male species delivering, which brings me into the seahorse, right? Because in the seahorse community, the female gives her egg to the male. He carries once she's chosen him. Now that makes me question this story with Adam and Eve, because I told you guys, if you take me and put me to sleep and create something from me, should I turn around and marry that? That sounds like a clone situation. Sounds like it's now my kid. I'm trying to tell y'all something. I see something with Adam, man. And I believe he was no longer chosen to carry because he could not control his Johnson. She was now raised up to be the mother of the living. Huh. That's an interesting story, guys. And you just got to frame your mind to decide that you want to think outside the box. You know, I didn't want to believe that until I found the male seahorse and the male seahorse is carrying. I thought it was going to sound crazy to bring this to y'all. But it ain't so crazy now is it? Go ahead and research the male seahorse. She gives him her egg. Because it's not good for him to be alone. But was Adam unable to control himself with all of these trees in the garden, which he could have had any one of these trees, except this specific tree, which came from him, right? I can't prove this, guys. This is just a theory. This specific tree that came from him, he's not to touch. He couldn't control himself. Somebody brought out the story of Pocahontas, how she was 10 years old. Listen, guys, this is what they're calling the Holy Grail, is to get a little girl. And I'm going to show you, when these little girls don't want to agree, what happens to them. They want to shape and mold her. A ewe lamb. Baby. A baby, guys. They want to shape and mold her. Because a woman with a fully developed mind is a dangerous individual. So we got to get to that individual before she becomes a dangerous individual. Before her intuition is sharp. Right? Anyway, I can't prove these theories, guys, but I've proven a lot. I've proven a lot over here. And I feel like that's one mama just is giving me. And whether or not I can prove it to you guys, hey, it's proven in my mind. Something went down with Adam, guys, and Eve wasn't meant to be his mate. That's the way it's looking to me. But I'm not here to prove that today, guys. I'm here today. But one day I will. One day I will. I love a challenge. I'm here today, guys, to prove to you that in North America, something special was happening. Something special was happening. People here were listening. People here were being blessed. Because they weren't making altars with steps. They were making altars of earth. There's over 1 million of them here. I showed y'all that last week. But this week, I want to pay close attention to some specific mounds, right? Shout out to all of my Ohio people, Mississippian. Shout out to Unifers. Her dad is from these parts. Shout out to Melissa, soon to be being let out the hospital, guys. Her peeps is from this parts, the Ohio, Mississippi Valley region. The Delta, right? Let's get into it, guys. I've dragged this on long enough. I want to talk about the old Americas for a second. I liked finding this little article here. The juvenile instructor. Why did they want to instruct the juveniles? I believe the children are the future. But they used to sing songs like that. It's impossible to know anything to a certainty. Sorry, to a certainty. What? Should have been certainty. In regards to the people of ancient America. I know I'm reading that right. I know I mess up sometimes. But this should not be certainly. It should be certainty. But all right. It's impossible to know anything to a certainty in regard to the people of ancient America, as all or nearly all of the old books are lost or destroyed. Yeah, they did that on purpose. The few annals preserved furnish but vague and dreamy outlines of the past. Here and there, a faint gleam of light breaks the obscurity, only sufficient to show at different periods in the history a reasonable and passable outline. When Cortez subjugated Mexico and the Aztecs. Now, you have to understand, when Cortez subjugated these people, they were not Spanish people. They were conquered by Spain. Okay? That's why it's going to be called New Spain. Okay? I tend to think, like I tell you, Assyria and Babylon. I tend to think the Spanish were Assyria, and I tend to think the English were Babylon. When Cortez subjugated Mexico, so they forced Spanish on this region. This was an indigenous region before it was conquered by the Spanish. Okay? They were our family, but our family left the back door open, and you cannot get into bed with these. You just can't. I'm up here looking for my lighter, which I just had. And they don't care if I... Hold on, guys. All right. Crisis averted. We found the lighter. So, when Cortez subjugated Mexico and the Aztecs had been in power more than 2 centuries. Okay? Gotta remember, these were initially indigenous people. They might be all mixed up now with the mestizos. Right? Shout out to Sylvia. Sylvie taught me that word, the mestizos. Those are the people mixed, the indigenous people mixed with the Spanish. Extensive ruins and splendid monuments of art attested that a highly civilized people had, centuries before, occupied Anahuac. This race had not only peopled Mexico proper, but also Central America, and doubtless South America, as traces of a like civilization are found in these localities. You got to understand, the Southern Kingdom was filled with the builders, right? Right? What do you see Solomon doing? The master builders, right? Now, I just made this connection the other day, and this is why I keep saying, was South America the Southern Kingdom, and was North America the Northern Kingdom, right? We thinking bigger now. We're not just thinking states here. And the reason why I asked that to Crystal the other day is because when I think of master builders, who we always see outside of Home Depot? Who do we always see outside of Lowe's? And we joke about this joint to this day, but are there ripples of the history present in today? And I say there are. I say there are. Because there's one race of people that we know are known for building shit. Shout out to you, Sylvie. This ain't no jab. It's the truth. I think you're family. Okay? I think you're a wayward cousin, but we still love you. I think this race of builders, this master builders that the cornerstone they rejected, right? Which is evident in all of these stone pyramids down there in South America, the ziggurats and the pyramids down there versus the mounds here, right? They rejected mama down there. We didn't reject her up here. And that's why you're going to see 1 million mounds in North America. That's why this was the choice land. That's why it was equipped with the dew from heaven and the everlasting hills. Those were those Rockies in the middle that we were fighting for. And I'm going to show y'all a picture of old Mexico. Let's get into it because I'm ranting and raving and I think we already like 10 minutes in and we ain't really covered nothing. So let's get to the article, y'all. This race had not only peopled Mexico proper, we dealt with that already. Most of the ancient, we're right here. Most of the ancient history of the Aztecs relates to ages previous to their time, chiefly to their predecessors, the Toltec. But according to these writings, the country where the vast ruins are found was occupied at different periods by 3 distinct people. And I'm here to tell y'all I'm going to jack these names all the way up, but we're going to give it a shot. How has Samara already lost the lighter again? Hold on, guys. Alright, so these people are the Chichimecs, Colhuas, and the Toltecs, or Nahuas. The Namuas? I wonder, right? The Nahua people. Indigenous people of Mexico. See, I'm trying to tell y'all, these people weren't just Spanish people. There was some indigenous people there. What was their religion? Let's see. Pre-Hispanic indigenous traditions with Spanish Catholicism. Reciprocal relationships between human and nature. See, these people were more in tune with nature. I told you guys this. And they stole a lot of this from us, because like I told y'all, those the Trinity, the Trinity is a play on the triple goddess. All of this is coming from us first. So the Toltecs come in, right? But according to these writings, the country where the vast ruins are found was occupied at different periods, right? Jeffrey supposes the Toltec arrived in the year 648. Baldwin asserts that they came into the country about 1,000 years before the Christian era, and it appears the supremacy ceased and left the country broken up and divided into small states 2 or 3 centuries before the arrival of the Aztecs. The knowledge of astronomy and the correct measurement of the year known to Montezuma's people were methods adopted from and formerly in use among the Toltecs. It's reasonable to refuse to give some attention to their chronology, even while doubting its value as a means of fixing dates. In the histories written in the Nahuatl language, excuse me, the oldest certain date is 955 years before Christ. This is the oldest date in the history of the Toltecs, which has been accurately determined. They got a codex, look that up, guys. I hadn't had time to. This is given as a date of the division of the land by the Toltecs. Sound familiar? Land being divided. Pay attention, guys. That is a division was made 2513 years previously. Okay, if the date be accepted, more than 1,000 years before the Christian era. Somewhere at a distance to the northeast, see, a major decision was made about the division of the land. See that? Right? By the Toltecs. Okay? All right? They give you different names to throw you off the scent. This is what it's looking like to me. Somewhere in the northeast, so like laws were coming out of the northeast to set the tone for things, okay? And it's saying undoubtedly the Ohio and Mississippi Valley regions, okay? Law was coming out of the Mississippi and Ohio region. Why is that important? Where did we find the most mounds? Did somebody in the Mississippi and Ohio region have the authority to lay out these laws? They must have. They must have. Right? They were able to divide the land, and this rulership, right? This authority came out of Ohio and Mississippi. The Toltec, it says, came from a distant northeastern country. He mentioned a company that settled near the Tampico River and built a town called Panuco. This guy found an account of that. Another country preserves Zelanco, an ancient city situated on an island between Lake Terminos and the sea. Okay? They focused on two different areas. This is an ancient city in Mexico, Xanadu. Okay? The city was famous for its commerce, intelligence, and wealth. The company came from the northeast, it said, to the Tampico River. It consisted of 20 chiefs and a large company of people. 20 chiefs, huh? I bet it did. This person also found a record which describes them as a people fine in appearance, industrious, orderly, and intelligent. Also that they worked in metals and were skillful artists and lapidaries. All the accounts say the Toltec came at different times by land and sea in small companies and always from the northeast. This can only be explained by supposing they came from the mouth of the Mississippi River along the coast and by land through Texas. All right, so all of the regions we've been talking about over here. But the country from which they came was invariably this place right here. Right? We can't even say the name of it. We so disenfranchised from the land, we can't even say these names. Okay? The name of the country was simply Tlaplano land. And we are tearing that up. But y'all see it right here. Give it a shot. Try to get familiar with this old name, right? That they done removed you from. I'm tripping over the name. It probably flowed like water back in the day. But that they called it Hu, old, to distinguish it from 3 other areas, which they founded in the New Kingdom. And it seems not improbable that the old, right, was the country of our mound builders. Okay? Get familiar. This is what they were calling the mound builder region. You hear Samar stumbling over it? We've been so removed from our old world. In connection with the account of the Toltec migration, another circumstance is mentioned, right? That it was invaded by the Chimenex, meaning a barbarous aboriginal tribe united under one leader. Sounded familiar? Right? Sounded divided land, right? People unite under one leader, right? Sound like some David shit. Tell me I'm lying. We got a divided kingdom. We got a king forming, right? Barbarous aboriginal tribes united under one leader. There was a terrible struggle, but after about 13 years, the Toltec, no longer able to resist successfully, were obliged to abandon their country to escape complete subjugation. Who was subjugated, guys? Israel. Israel. 2 chiefs guided the march of the immigrating nation. At length, they reach a region near the sea. Why'd they need to get near the sea, huh? Huh? That's where their power was. It's named Tlepalan Conco. We're going to try to give that a word. I hate that I'm struggling with that word. Where they remained several years, but they finally undertook another migration and reached Mexico, where they built a town right here, lately the city of Tulin, which became the seat of their government. The right here, Chickakimmick, I guess we're going with that, is placed at a period in the chronology of the old native books, long previous to the Christian era. Okay? You better find these books, because this invasion is mentioned before this era. See? They've hidden our history from us. According to the manuscript of Don Juan Torres, grandson of the last king of the Quiches, the Toltecs descended from the house of Israel. What'd I say? What did Samar say? Who were released by Moses from the tyranny of Pharaoh. The story runs as follows. After they had fallen into adultery, to avoid the reproofs of man, they separated from him. From Moses, as they should have. Did not tell you this raggedy mofo did not make it into the promised land. And under the guidance, it says, of Tanub, passed from one continent to the other, landing at a place called the seven caverns. Sepharvadim, right? What I tell you, the 7 crown, the 7 on her diadem, the 7 hills on the top of Lady Liberty's head. There are 7 caverns here. You see what I'm saying? That there were guards to. This is only confirming that. A part of the kingdom of Mexico, where they found the city of Tula. From Tanub sprang the kings of Quiche and the first monarchs of the Toltec. The Toltec were the most celebrated nation. They also lived in a social manners collected into cities under governments of regular laws. Their superior civilization and skills in the arts were adopted by all the civilized nations of Mexico. So that their shit was hijacked. They were not very warlike. Preferring civilization of the arts, right, to the exercise of arms. If not the inventors, they were at least the reformers of the admirable system of the arrangement of time, which was adopted by the nations of Mexico. So thieves, remember, Mexico is the Spaniards right now, right? It's the new Spain. It's the thieving Spanish. They couldn't get a foothold in North America, so they retained their foothold in South America. So that's probably Babylon, actually, to still be holding on the foothold, huh? I'm kind of thinking this. All right, they're going to give you some names here. There's a divine book, right here. It's a divine sacred book. Refer to a type of religious or divinatory manuscript. So, there's always more books, guys. The Borgia. Caesar Borgia. I don't know, guys. Is that the reference? And tell me. Origin of the Indians, their dispersion after the flood, and confusion of tongue at Babel. So this book is bringing in all of the biblical stories before the Bible existed. So they got their Bible from this. I'm trying to show y'all something here. The eclipse of the sun, they were marking that at the death of their Savior. See, birth of their Christ. You got to get into The Toltecan monarchy concluded in the year 1052. Oh, wait a second. Let's go back up here. Their religion was idolatrous, and they appeared to have been the authors of the greater part of the mythology of the Aztecs. But they never practiced those barbarous and bloody sacrifices which became afterwards so common among the other nations. Bullshit, they were practicing them too. Toltecan monarchy concluded. Previous to this, direful calamities happened to them, right? Didn't the creators say, if you do this, this is going to happen to you. If you do that. For several years, heaven denied them rain. Ain't this something? Ain't this something? The earth, the fruits, and their air were filled with mortal contagion, and consequently, the greater part of the nation perished. The wretched remains sought relief to their misfortunes by scattering themselves over the territory south and north of their kingdom. Who does sound like, y'all? After the destruction of the Toltec for nearly a century, the land remained solitary and almost entirely deserted. What did the verse say? Your lands will be uninhabited. Yeah, this is sounding a lot like Deuteronomy 28 to me. Whatever happened to these specific people? But they bought in that these people came through the mouth of the Mississippi, right? Right here. Ohio and Mississippi valleys, right? Because this is where we find all of the mounds. Let's go back to our folder. Good grief, we only in the first book, guys. Hold on, but I bought this in because I want to show y'all what South America was once looking like, okay? And who do we run into first at this boundary line? Louisiana. Huh? Louisiana, huh? Port Arthur. Right here, right? Joseph is a branch next to a well, right? And it never really dawned on me that they actually found that oil or broke ground on that oil. I thought they said in Pennsylvania first. But half of America was Mexico, okay? And this is why they said the world calls it the Gulf of Mexico. Mexicans were called Americanos before the concept of America existed. America is a Spanish word. These are wayward cousins. Didn't I tell you, Emrys, right? Stephen the Moor's child. So it would make sense that that word America was known amongst them before it was known amongst us. Look, this was us over here. See that? So I want you to know that America, as we know it today, was different. This is the disputed areas. This is the no man's land. We're going to bring that in too. The Louisiana Purchase area, right? You see it. You know, I bought in these old maps because I need y'all to understand, okay, what it was looking like. Even Texas was way smaller. Told you they came in through Texas. Okay, you got to get a clear understanding of this area as we're speaking of it then. Let's bring in these some of these mounds. All right, so we're going to be talking about this one in Winterville, right? It's called Winterville. For more than 1,000 years, travelers have visited the communal gathering space. Why is this a communal gathering space? Is it because she said fellowship right here? Is that why it's a communal gathering place? One of the largest Native American mound sites in the United States is Winterville Mound. Okay? The mound at Winterville were hand-built by people that thrived in the area from 1000 AD to 1450. Winterville served as a communal space, not just ceremonial, but a place to gather, trade, and celebrate. See, these people were being obedient. 12 23 mounds, and 2 large plazas are still intact today. Since 2000, the Mississippi Department of Archives and Histories has administered this significant cultural site. And they got some federally recognized folks over there, but I wanted you to see the aerial view of this. This, for some reason, guys, was bringing in that Dresden Codex for me. I hope I remember. Let me just pause it and go get to that. So for me, I keep seeing this little clock face, right? When I think about the Dresden Codexes, and you see her, the crone represented, the mama is represented with the snake headdress, right? And you see she's pulling back in the vessel. It's actually coming back from him, which he has the keys, right? He has the keys. This is their God to their bottomless pit, right? So he thinks mama's about to take it back. See the jaguar, right? The jaguar is represented in the spots, in the phoenix right here, in the eagle. And the jaguar crushed her head. Look, mama, and she's got spotted feet. Is she sick? Right? You can't heal my daughter. See that X, right? So I was questioning, like, is this being represented in this? Because I'm kind of seeing it, guys. You know, call me crazy. But if you were seeing this from the top, this would be a 4-way cross. You see? But it's also stepped, so we got a problem, don't we? Alright, so let's get down to here. Archaeological evidence indicates the Native Americans who used the Winterville Mounds were most likely ancestral to the Natchez people, a tribe documented by French explorers and settlers in the early 1700s near the modern-day city that bears their name. Now, I want y'all to know, when they keep talking about this France connection, this is this Louis connection. This is this Louisiana, right? And I had, shout out to Israel, I had put up an article where I found that the French king was exporting people from Louisiana to Jamaica. So that's all that French connection is. It's just Levi. Says here the primary accounts written by those colonists included Natchez, lifestyles and activities that happened at their ceremonial mound centers led many scholars to label them as the last of mound builders and last of the Mississippian chiefdom. Mound building was a community activity. As such, massive amounts of labor were needed to construct these mounds, plazas, and their earthworks. All of the work was done by hand. Community members dug the soil and loaded it into baskets. Can y'all imagine? Then carried the baskets to the site, dumped it out, and tamped it down. That means they stepped on it. This process was repeated until the desired shape and height of the mound was reached. Over years, each mound was enlarged several times after its initial construction using this method. Mound maintenance would have been an important part of community life, and the mounds would have looked much different than the grassy hills seen today. Evidence discovered during the archaeological investigations, I guess they did these in 2016 and 17, indicate that Mound A was covered with clay, which would have kept the summit clean and prevented erosion. You hear that? They actually covered this over with clay. It seems to have been common practice to burn any structure at its summit before enlarging a mound, then building another structure when new construction was complete. These sites served as a community center with temples and houses for chiefs placed atop the mounds. The chiefs lived on top of the mound. Now, you want to know why Samara has a mound, and you want to know why I keep saying I'm the chief. I didn't make myself that. Mama made me that. You see? The civic and religious leaders often ordained through matrilineal kinship. See? Wait, what did I just say? lived at these mound sites, while most of the population lived at family farmsteads dispersed across the area. The matrilineal kinship, right? Where is that matrilineal kinship now? It's rising back up, just as it was predicted to do, right? What did the book tell us? Joseph's branch will reach over the wall. Let's go. The matrilineal kinship was what was holding all of this together, right? People from the surrounding areas right here would travel to and congregate at the site for special events, feasts, and ceremonial activities. This is where you grab these daughters of Shiloh up from. A great fire during the late 1300s consumed the original buildings on the Temple Mound at Winterville. The cause of the fire remains a mystery. You think it's a mystery to y'all? The site continued to be used afterwards, but no more mounds were built or maintained. While the site continued to be occupied after the fire, the general population declined. Okay? Once they wiped out this little mound, right, that was an intricate part of that community, the population started to decline. Increasing at settlements, right, and mound sites 50 miles to the south, the Yazoo River Basin. Winterville Mound appears to have been abandoned completely by 1450 AD. This was Mound A. They're trying to reconstruct it. You see? This one looked like it had a little highway leading up to it, right? These are fortified structures, guys. You got to understand, I've been saying for a long time that a hill is a strategic advantage. So this is going to get into some of the construction. You see the intricate design from overhead, right? They're trying to preserve some of them. They had a litany of these mounds. See, and they're going to give them different letter, to identify them by a different letter. And it says, I think it goes up to I, mounds F through I, see? Look at this. Mississippi revealed that this second plaza contained a sizable midden and evidence of feasting, indicating a thriving seasonal population visited the significant site. Who is doing the seasonal work usually? Just saying. A dunghill. A sizable dunghill. Okay, so they were having feasts and people were throwing their excrement. So this proved it was so much excrement, I'm supposing, that, or trash, it says, the trash hill. I don't want to underestimate any word that we are finding nowadays. Can't do it. Let's see. Which one are we going to now? I believe we're in this folder. Alright, I wanted to bring in the Cahokia Mounds. Reason being, guys, is that, and they're specifically in Illinois, okay? I wanted to bring in these mounds because these were the ones that were shaped like that oil lantern. So remember, if we're dealing with east, now I said Spain would have been Assyria, but I'm actually have to take that back, because if we're looking at this map, let it go. If we're looking at this map, who invaded the East Coast? That would have been more Britain. Britain invaded the East Coast. Spain invaded the West, which is evidenced by some of the names of some of the places on the West Coast. So, here we go. Here's the map I was looking for. if we're going to go with that, I mean, the East Coast would have been more like, well, like I told you, I feel like the whole of North America was actually belonging to these people before these people took it over. You know? I really do. But let's go to Cahokia. The tens of thousands of ancient people who populated the first Native American city around 1,000 years ago supped on heady stimulants, worshipped female goddesses, welcomed immigrants, a book has revealed. You see that? I don't like the ESS's on the end of this because I believe they worshipped a god who happened to be female, and I believe it was only one of them. But for it to be perverted, it would have had to start at least with one woman for it to have ventured out into this female goddess worship, right? With ESS's on the end, right? And this is supposed to be a carving that they found with the serpent on the head. We keep seeing this, right? Located in what is today St. Louis, right? We're going to get to that St. Louis. Between 10,000 and 30,000 inhabitants are believed to live in the city of Greater Cahokia, which reached its peak between 1050 and 12,000 AD, the earliest of the large Mississippian settlements. It was also the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico. But 250 years later, the hub had mysteriously vanished. North America's first native city, right, was Cahokia. This is what they're saying. The University of Illinois at Urbana campaign detailed how the settlement not only featured homes and temples fashioned from wood posts and thatched roofs and walls, but storage facilities, cemeteries, and monuments such as mounds. People watch the stars, it says at this wood hinge post. The book takes into account excavations and studies carried out between 2008 and 2018. Archaeologists found 1,500 native structures, the base of a large mound, ceremonial plazas, and posts, as well as over 1 million artifacts. He called these a game changer for our understanding of native societies. It's no game changer because you've never even heard of this, and they still don't understand what these mounds were for. People immigrated to this new city from far and wide, probably perceiving it to have been blessed by spiritual forces. I wonder, what spiritual forces did y'all think this area was blessed by? They said these people were worshiping a goddess. There's no better place in North America for a civilization to arise. The city would have centered around the Monk's Mound Pyramid, the largest eastern structure in the New World, and featured a 50-acre public square, as well as 100 earthen monuments. Past research has shown how the city's private and public structures indicated the existence of a society with a political system structured around an economic hierarchy. By excavating the site, archaeologists were able to provide an insight into the daily lives of Cahokia. The remnants, interesting word, of plants scraped from the coffee mug-like clay beakers suggest the city dwellers indulged in a stimulant called black drink, made from the holly tea, while stone flint, copper and stone tools, and bones offer an insight into their diet. Drawing from farmed, hunted, and gathered food. Statues carved in the shapes of humans and animals suggest the settlers were spiritual and believed in goddesses. Early in its history, we suspect that one of the key unifying factors was a new religion that entered on world renewal and fertility. Unifying, a new religion. But by 12,000 AD, that religious system had disappeared to be replaced by one that seems to have been driven by warrior and sun motifs. The sun, the might of his arm, right? They started trusting in the might of his arm. And at one point, Illinois is referred to as the city of the sun. And where is Stephen supposed to be from? A child of the sun, right? By examining the teeth of dozens of people who were buried in the city, archaeologists conclude that at least a fifth of inhabitants were immigrants. Judging by objects, right? They kept marrying in, right? Using resources not available in the region. Cahokia are believed to have arrived bearing gifts. The Cahokians also imported goods, including seashell and shark teeth. Their dead, meanwhile, were buried in group ceremonies and mounds. Cahokia comes into existence specifically because it had the ability to attract immigrants through its 300-year history. See, this is when I think the downfall starts to take place. The history of the humans in the world, because, right, they started marrying the daughters, and this is where you get goddesses, right, instead of the god that you had. The history of the humans in the world is dominated by population movement. Early cities around the world, from Europe to China to Cahokia, were totally dependent for growth and success on migrants. The work also puts to rest theories that Cahokia was not a vast city, but a large mound site, similar to those dotted to the east of the Mississippi River. See, at this point, this is becoming some sort of city versus what was going on in the other areas, guys, okay? The cause of the downfall of Cahokia remains unknown. Well, it's not unknown when you start talking about goddesses and symbols of the sun. Some believe climate change was to blame, while others suggest war. Explanations about the dissolving of Cahokia as a polity are many, ranging from economic failure to the more recent popular interpretations that blame gigantic floods, droughts, overexploitation of resources, and so forth. In other words, the environment. This is not the environment. They make it sound like these things are just randomly happening. These would be man-made. The cause is always going to be man. The social, political, and religious change were likely the causes that encouraged residents to leave Cahokia. We suspect, given the multi-ethnic nature of the city, it wasn't always multi-ethnic, this is what became, guys, that they dispersed across much of mid-continental U.S. The key to long-term success was creating social, religious, and political unity to bring together a very diverse population. You couldn't do that. That's why you're supposed to stay with your people. Social and political fragmentation, not environmental change, was the greatest threat. I think it was a little bit of both. But look, these are some of the fragments and things like that that they found over there. Okay. That's Cahokia. Now, the downfall, right? They said they didn't understand what the downfall was. So I want to bring back in Cahokia because I'm going to tell you what this downfall was. This is where you start seeing some of what was going on in the South proliferating now in the North. Something extraordinary happened in the floodplain of the Mississippi River. Centered around what is now Collinsville, Illinois, a city arose that has astounded explorers. All right, it was Cahokia, right? Remember I told you in Cahokia is where we found the shape of that oil lantern. Part of a trio of sites, the East St. Louis Mounds, and Collinsville Mounds, known collectively as the Greater Cahokia. It was the center of political, religious, and social life that started to emerge in the Mississippian culture. Cahokia was comprised of more than 200 mounds. 120 were built within a 5-mile square zone of Collinsville that referenced the 4 sacred directions, north, south, east, and west, and were arranged around vast open plaza. The greatest of these was Monk's Mound, the largest pre-Columbian earthwork in North America. It sounded like something they built because it's going to have steps, and she didn't want nothing with no steps. The greatest of these was Monk's Mound, right, which towers 100 feet high and has a base wider than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's supposed to be 14.4 acres wide, guys. I got a mound that's 20 acres, but that's neither here nor there. Interspersed between the mounds were suburban-like neighborhoods, often arranged around courtyards with a central marker post. Thatch-roofed housed a circular sweat lodge, right? They were detoxing, so they knew about this serpent, and 1 or 2 other buildings. Further out from the mounds extended nearly 30 miles, family farmsteads. Of this vast city, only 80 mounds remain, including one of the most mysterious mounds of all, Mound 72. Mound 72 is a series of 3 smaller mounds that were eventually reshaped and covered to form one 7-foot high. The smaller mound contained an enigma, the burial of at least 272 people, many of whom were 15 to 25-year-old girls, killed as part of a human sacrifice ritual. The Cahokians practiced periodic episodes of ritual renewal, perhaps based on a solar or lunar calendar. So under this mound is the energy of the death. You see? This is why this is some perversion of what Mama had originally asked for, right? Which she said just an earth mound. She didn't ask for no bodies. Definitely no buried bodies. The beheaded burial of a male and female who were placed on top of numerous animal pelts. So they had cut someone's heads off. The male and female were covered with 2-inch thick layers of 20,000 beads made from marine shells from the Gulf of Mexico, shaped in a bird symbol that is similar to a falcon motif of later Mississippian culture. The male and female were in their mid to 20s when they died. You got 7 males and 7 females in this one, 2 bushels of mica, 15 chunky stones. I mean, you can go through this. Arrows, all kinds of stuff. A rectangular low mound where you got 13 people between the ages of 15 and 25. These people had their heads and hands missing. This was some gory stuff. The final feature is a series of burial pits extending along the southwestern edge of the mound that includes 39 males and females between the ages of 15 and 45. They look like they had been clubbed to death. Men, women, and children. These burials didn't happen all at once. They happened in spans of 10 human generations, 20 years each. So they said this makes the burial mound, the majority of which are teenage girls, a central event in Cahokian life. What would make them want to kill these teenage girls here? And it aligns with the summer solstice. The sun, right? Other excavations at Cahokia confirm the importance of Mound 72 and the girls buried there. Were these some wise women's children that were supposed to rise up, guys? Because look what they're going to find. Amidst the thousands of wooden pole and thatch buildings that flanked the mound, archaeologists found female flint clay figurines that have a recognizable artistic style unique to Cahokia. They found this one. The upper torso and head of a red goddess sculpture, carved from stone, which she didn't want, and found buried at the ancient American Indian city of Cahokia. Note the serpent wrapped around her head. Who keeps showing y'all this? Right? She will crush the serpent. This artifact dates to the 12th century, right? Because your great uncle don't like when it says he. This figurine depicts kneeling women. I wonder if these are the wailing women, who are often adorned with plants, including squash and sunflowers. Hoes, feline-headed serpents, and occasionally baskets that may represent medicine bundles. Most of the figurines are associated with food production and fertility, and many of the plants depicted were important to later tribes. Prominent among these figurines is a mythical being who appears in two forms: grandmother and corn mother, a central character in later Mississippian mythology. So you want to get out of here, knock yourself out. You want to go back to the heat god, find your way there to the sausage party that you must love, because all history is pointing back to her. Her, look. Everything's pointing back to her. You from here? Your people hail from Mississippi? Everything pointing back to her. I ain't saying these multiples, but her. A central character in later Mississippian mythology. Grandmother has several roles that could explain the importance of female sacrifices. Wouldn't explain it, but this is what they were going with. In myths and legends, grandmother teaches her people how to live well, acts as the patroness of vegetation and rejuvenation, is immortal, and helps resurrect the spirit of the dead. She's going to say grandmother is not only a symbol of fertility, she's a polysemous symbol with a fan of related concepts, symbols that are fairly constant across thousands of miles between speakers of different languages. Grandmother figurines, as well as female figurines, were rare outside of Cahokia during its reign. I'm going to say this suggests that the grandmother was a central figure in Cahokia mythology or ritual. 5 of these statues were found ritually broken or killed. See that? They didn't like that. Curiously, all of these ritual killings also occurred near burials, suggesting the statues reference grandmother's role in caregiving or resurrection. Theorized that this ritual killing could be linked to early green corn or world renewal ceremonies in which grandmother or corn mother, as well as young girls, played a key role. Now that's funny. My people represent Saluda, the green corn Indians, right? The Sirah. All of the sites associated with these ritually killed statues were linked to each other. Monk's Mound through a lunar alignment. They suggest that the Earth Mother cult and its priests and priestesses may have been central to Cahokian religion. You see? See? This Earth Mother, huh? What does all this mean? When you combine the clay figurines and the grandmother mythology, Mound 72's female sacrifices take on a central role in Cahokia culture. It's like they were wiping out the worship of her. Add to it that Cahokia was founded following a period of intense agricultural revolution when maize first became widely cultivated in the region, and all these finds become the foundation of a new Native American civilization. You see? Out with the old, in with the new. They got rid of her. At the epicenter of events was a radical new kind of social and political experiment, a planned capital city built around a big idea, one of such magnitude and force that it impelled tens of thousands of people to drop what they were doing and follow a new path. You see that? Within 50 years of its founding, Cahokia's population quadrupled, a result of agricultural advancements. as well as the relocation of people from surrounding areas to partake in Cahokia's new social order. As the first city in what is now the United States, Cahokia became a site where young girls were integral to manifesting and maintaining social order. You see? You see, they had to wipe out these wise women that were on the rise and institute their new order. The origins of the sacrifice girls is still debated. But we're going to get into what this word Illinois means. Why were so many Cahokians killed? You see this? They focused on life renewal, fertility. They had people beheaded in these mounds. Let me show you what this Lewis is. You see this? Louis, Levi. You see? Somebody ain't making this up. Louis. Louis. See? Is Levi. See? It's a variant. Lewis is Levi. Right here they telling you. Lewis is Levi. You see, it's right there. A form of Louis. Louis, Levi. So when you see Louisville, right, in Illinois, and you see Louisiana, you know where this is coming from. The Illinois identity. Illinois Indians visiting New Orleans. Illinois, it as if one said in their language, the men. See? The Illinois or Illinois nation consisted of several independent American tribes that spoke a common language. The Illinois called themselves the Inaka. See? Missionaries generally referred to them as Illinois, but also used some other terms. According to Jacques, is a Jesuit, right? There's that Levi connection, that Louisiana, St. Louis connection. A Jesuit missionary who visited them in 1673, the word Illinois meant the men. He speaks in the ordinary way, but the men. Did the men round up these young women who were goddess worshiping, right? Did they marry in, because they found some immigrants too, who changed the dynamic from the worship of her to this goddess worship? Let me bring in some photos. All right, we got our mound photos because I wanted to bring this in for a reason. Okay, so we already looked at that map of the northeast areas, right? We already brought in the map. But you'll see here, look at Shiloh. Look at Shiloh. You see that? There's Fort Ancient, Appalachian, Mississippi, Palomine. But that Palomine area and that Mississippian area is all up in that Louisiana Purchase area, right? But I want to bring in the definition for mound, guys, before we get out of here. A mound is a hedge, a fence, right? Also an embankment, a dam. This was the original dam. A sense probably influenced by mount, a word of obscure origin. The relationship between the noun and verb is unclear. Commonly supposed to be from Middle English mound, the hand, guardianship, power, from Old English mound, but it's not certain. Perhaps it is a confusion of the native word in Middle Dutch mond, protection, used in military sense for fortification of various types, including a hedge, fence, right? Look at this. From 1726 as an artificial elevation of earth, as over a grave, as natural low elevation, as the place where the pitcher stands on a baseball field. From 1912, mound builder, one of the prehistoric race of the Mississippi Valley that erected extensive earthworks, is by 1838. In Middle English, mondi also meant the word from Old French mondi, from the Latin mundus, from mundane. We're following this word. Earthwork, mounds of earth thrown up for some purpose, especially as a military fortification. In the sense Old English, mound embankment meant work on the land. Earth is going to be ground, soil, dirt, dry land, something done, right? Earthwork. So the word earthwork was leading me to the word rampart. Earthen elevation around a place for fortification, capable of resisting cannon shot, sometimes also including a parapet, from French rempart. Rampart reminded me of remnant, to fortify. Again, fortify, take possession of. Right? Weren't they supposed to take possession of something? Prepare properly, to make preparations beforehand. Right? Before the front, forehead. So like how we on the front line, meaning in front or before. To get, prepare. Procurement. Influence of the boulevard. See? So this word rampart is influencing the word boulevard. Did you even know? I didn't. But I thought it was interesting that one of the things that these mounds were supposed to be able to do was to resist cannon fire. Many countries have fought with cannons as they become a standard weapon after being introduced to Europe in the 14th centuries. Initial users include the English and French, right? Levi, right? Followed by the Swedes, Poles, Russians, the Byzantines, and Ottomans by the end of the 14th century. Family gonna look like family. What I told you. You think it's a surprise you see the Byzantines in there along with the French? No, it's not a surprise. That's that Stephen the Moore connection. England and France used cannons during the 100-Year War, starting in the mid-14th century. Sweden, Poland, Russian, Byzantium, and the Ottoman empires employed cannons by the end of the 14th century. The Mongol Empire adopted gunpowder weaponry, including early cannons, after encountering the Song dynasty. The Sun, huh? The Adi Sultanate and Abyssinian Empire used cannons. Spain used cannons, right? The Japanese and Koreans. Okay, so this was modern use is Austria, Hungary, German, Italy, and Greece. All of the cousin nations, right? And I thought about how these were defensive and protective barriers. And that word rampart brought for me in that Star-Spangled Banner. The ramparts are the defensive walls of a fort, specifically referring to the walls of Fort McHenry during the Battle of Baltimore. So I'm going to have to look up this Fort McHenry and find out, was this Fort McHenry once a mound? You know, who built it? How did we get it? All of that good stuff. But these mounds were here. And this land didn't always look like that. You got to remember, we were looking like this initially. You know, looked like Levi encroached on some area here. You know, did he go off? Is there some sea we're going to see, some river or something he was able to cross and go into the western half of the Americas to symbolize leaving out of Egypt? Because this is the Delta area, okay? This would be where Moses would have claimed to left out of Egypt. You know, they call that the Delta, the Mississippi region. You know, I have to figure this out, but these mounds were an integral part of what was here before they came in. And somebody asked, were these Toltecs Israelites? They asked the question, said they were coming out of the mouth of the Mississippi. You see? Mound builders. Obedient to me, if you ask me. They were just obedient to, here goes, after they'd fallen into adultery, right? This is when they start building these pyramids, right, of stone, right? Where Moses strikes a rock. Is this lost Israel? I say it is. And I think we need to pull on this divine book right here. Thanks, y'all, for tuning in this week. This is just a follow-up on those mounds and a follow-up on Exodus, 20 and 24, where we find all of these mounds. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Much love. I'll see you guys next week.